Welcome to the football show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin, delighted that you could join us on the programme. Alan Ruff, as ever, is with me in this 10th year, Ruffy.
Yep.
Who gets 10 in a row in Scotland? It's just outrageous.
There's not many testimonials going about now. No on these kind of shows.
Certainly
anyway.
not.
Absolutely not.
Both of us are up for a testimonial.
By the way, I was just about to say to you, he's been with us since the start, 10 in a row.
Wow, unbelievable.
That's incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible.
And not a brick thrown in anger at us. So
I just keep turning up. I don't get paid or anything. I just keep wandering into the
Hugh, when we
studios.
chuck it, you're there till the end, by the way. It doesn't matter.
We've moved a few times, you're still coming.
I always find you.
You know, we keep building new studios, but he's still here and we're delighted. Hugh MacDonald, I'm delighted to say also, Motherwell coach now, but played for Motherwell and Dundee United. I'd written down a few other clubs here, by the way. I didn't put them all in. You had a wee loan spell at Aberdeen, Dunfermline, Stenhousemuir, Forfar. Jim Patterson, welcome to the programme. Where was the most enjoyable period for you?
It's a toss-up between Dundee United and Motherwell. It's a toss-up. I come up through the ranks at United, but had a few severe injuries, but the fans were always good to me. And then going to Motherwell, coming back down the road, and then you had Terry Butcher, Maurice Malpass as coaches, then Mark McGee, and a lot of good friends there, and obviously back at the club as well, do you know what I mean, and working with close friends again. So no, day two for standing by me and giving me my debut, and then obviously Motherwell close to my heart.
Yeah. Where was the best football that you played? Was there a season where you thought
Motherwell?
Yeah,
it was Motherwell. Like I said, I'd always done alright, but I only spent the first. I got moved to Plymouth halfway through Mark McGee's very first season, and that was after obviously we struggled under Mo a bit, and then Mark took over, and then we just hit that season flying.
Yeah.
So that the first 6 months before I left, that was some of the best football that I'd played. But I think as a team, we played some unbelievable football that year.
Yeah, I'm amazed actually. How the hell? I mean, obviously I know because Ruffy tells me people go for, because the game's all about protecting your family, making money, but you must have been tempted to stay because that was the best football I'd seen Motherwell play in a long period.
Well, it was tempting to stay for a number of reasons, but when it came to it, I had a young family, and it was one of them where I was getting older. I think it was about 28, and it was the chance to lure Plymouth at that stage. We're in the Championship. I'm sitting 6th, because when I went to Plymouth we won 4 out of 5, we ended up 4th. We were actually having a sniff, but we fell away towards the end of the season. That was the year Hull went up when Winda scored at Wembley.
Yeah.
So we were close, so the lure of going down and playing in England was there, but you knew what you were leaving because we were relentless that year. You knew Motherwell got to finish third and get the European spot.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because the one thing, listening to Jim, and we often mention it on here, in years gone by, fans would look and say, there's no way you can leave our club because, you've got to have that loyalty, whereas everyone in our game and the players themselves know this is a living, you've got to protect your family, you've got to look after yourself. And even now I still think that a lot of fans look and question players.
Kind of grasp it. I don't think it is about loyalty, but what are you loyal to? You've got to be loyal to your family first. I mean, no matter how much your connection to a football club, I mean, there's priorities in life. I mean, that's number one. The thing about it is, Peter, I mean, it's something that's happened all through generations. I mean, I've been watching Scottish football since the 1950s, and it's always happened. But now it's happening like, you could have a Colin Steen leaving for Coventry. We'll talk about John Hughes later leaving for Crystal Palace and things like that. But now it's players now leaving for League Two teams in England.
Yeah.
Because, and maybe even National League teams, but League Two teams, because the gulf in wages now. If you're earning a grand in Scotland, that's a lot of Premier players in Scotland are earning a grand.
Hugh,
that's League Two wages.
I love your point, but dare I say it, Ruffy, I know a few players who are leaving for junior clubs because the wage is incredible.
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of teams and the guys in the lower divisions who are trying to sign players from other Premier professional clubs, and they can't compete with the juniors. Not all the juniors, but certainly the juniors that have got money, they all can.
Well, that's that's one of the most vibrant kind of environments that there is. That Lowland League is just packed full of teams that are full of energy. They want to go that way.
Yeah.
And if you look at that Lowland League, you've got Talbot in it, you've got East Kilbride, you've got Broomhill. They're going to get money as well. I mean, it's a huge. Well, Talbot's not huge. Talbot's in the
It's a
league
shake
below,
up
but
to the
it's
bottom
huge.
division because there's so many teams been in there for years and years and years and shown no ambition whatsoever. They've just sat there, get whatever handouts there is for the SFA, but now they've been woken up because they now realise that the teams that you're talking about have ambition to go up the leagues, you know, and they're going to get left behind.
Darrell signed a centre half for 12 grand. How many teams in League 1 or 2 could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to talk more with Jim about what he's doing now, and obviously there's a Motherwell vacancy. There's Dundee United in European competition. Let's first of all start with the sad news about John Yogi Hughes. He was undoubtedly a Celtic legend. He has a tremendous medal haul, and the family released a statement that I think a number of Celtic people would have been well aware was possibly coming. John Yogi Hughes, aged 79, passed away peacefully in hospital after a short illness. He was surrounded by his loving family. He was dearly loved and will be sorely missed, always remembered and celebrated with love by his wife Teresa, sons Kevin, Martin and John, and his daughter Joanna, and his 6 grandchildren and extended family. He now joins the ranks of those who will be immortal as long as there's a Glasgow Celtic. It's a lovely touch for a man that I think a lot of Celtic fans of a certain generation will hold dear in their heart. Maybe a few will shed the odd tear in memory of him strutting his stuff in the hoops, and PLZ Soccer and the Football Show looks back at a Celtic legend. John Yogi Hughes made his name playing for Celtic over a 12-year period in the 1960s and early 70s. He was part of the famous Lisbon Lions squad that lifted the European Cup in 1967, although he missed playing in the final through injury. He did, however, play in Celtic's second European Cup final, where they lost to Dutch side Feyenoord in 1970. Nicknamed Yogi, one of his finest moments came in the European Cup semi-final victory over Leeds United in front of a record crowd of 136,505 at Hampden Park, where he scored in a 2-1 victory to send Celtic into the final in Milan. John Hughes scored 189 goals in 416 appearances for the Hoops and has an impressive medal haul which includes 7 league titles, 4 Scottish Cups, 5 League Cups and those 2 European medals for his involvement in both campaigns. Capped 8 times for Scotland, John Yogi Hughes also played for Crystal Palace and Sunderland, but he will always be remembered as a Celtic legend. Yeah, I think a lot of Celtic fans will look back at some of those games that were mentioned there. League Cup finals, scoring against Rangers, but the Leeds United one, to have 136,505 inside Hampden. I'm sure there were a few freebies in there as well, Hugh. But John Hughes played a huge part in that game.
Absolutely, because people forget Celtic won 1-0 down at Elland Road. George Connolly scored, and it looked as if, that was tie over. But Leeds are a really good team. Leeds came up and Bremner scored an absolute cracker, one each, and that really deflated everybody. I mean, it was still an incredible atmosphere, but suddenly the seed of doubt had been sown, and everybody, if you talk to a lot of the players at the time, they said, that was a step. But John Hughes, who was often used as an outside left, as we know, Steen played him at centre forward that day for a reason, because he knew he'd give Jack Charlton a tough time. And he absolutely ragdolled Jack Charlton, absolutely ragdolled him. And obviously scored in that equaliser. Once that equaliser was scored, there was like a collective sigh of relief that that's it over. And the funny thing, I interviewed John a couple of years ago, and that is probably maybe his most famous goal, a header. And he said, I scored 169 goals for Celtic. He's 6'2", barrel of man. He says, I don't know if I scored double figures with headers.
Is that right?
He says, wee Jinky probably scored more headers than me. Because wee Jimmy was good with the head. He says, wee Jinky probably scored more headers than me. So that just shows you what kind of player he was. But anybody who watched him, Peter, and I was privileged to watch him on a regular basis, you couldn't have watched John Hughes for good or ill, on a good day or a bad day, and forget that you'd watched him. Yeah. He was just like... I mean, they say now people will get you out of your seats. So there's no seats in these days. We're standing on top of your carry out, but he would get you on top of your carry out, put it that way. That was the kind of, it was just, and that's what Feed the Bear was all about. Feed the Bear was all about expectation. Say things were going wrong, Feed the Bear, give it, he'll do something, give it to him. We're in a hole, he'll dig you out. great player for Celtic. Okay, people will say that he didn't play in the final, but I think he might have played if he declared himself fit. I think he thinks he would have played if he declared himself fit. Played in 5 of the ties that got Celtic there, and just a great guy. If you would indulge me, I'll tell you one wee story about him.
Fire away, son.
If you indulge me, as a young kid, a schoolboy, I sent him a wee letter with a postal order on it, say, can you get me 2 tickets for the Fiorentina game? Expecting a knockback, right? Yeah. Through the post comes the wee letter, 2 tickets in it, with my postal order, untouched. Enjoy the game. So then life's a funny thing. 50 years later, I'm interviewing him and I said, listen, I says, thanks very much for the tickets the other week. He says, what other week? I says, Fiorentina. It was like 50 years ago. What? He says, I sent you a ticket. I says, thanks for it. And he just went away. He says, no, son. He says, that's what you should do. That's what Celtic players should do. Give tickets to the fans. If you've got tickets, just give them to the fans, And I went, fantastic, generosity. Not even want to take credit for it years on. Just waved it off, Great player, great man, and just another sad day, Peter, because we're just losing that generation. Yeah. One by one,
Can I just point, I'm going to speak to the guys as well, but can I just point one thing out that I don't quite know, Jim, you'll be aware of this from, when you're playing in big games, Ruffy definitely, with the big games that he's played in, a lot of people will look back. I think the big games like the 1970 European Cup final, a lot of people probably don't celebrate that because Celtic lost in the final, but that was some run and some scalps they'd taken to get there for Yogi to play in that game.
Well, everybody called the semi-final the final. That was probably the big problem. Everybody called it the final, and I think Feyenoord and Yogi would say it himself when you interviewed them, they were underestimated. I think Jock Steen, and you'll not hear this of him, it wasn't his finest hour. He played 2 in midfield. He dropped Connolly, where you're thinking back, he said, you're going to have to play 3 in Feyenoord. I mean, Feyenoord's midfield had Wim Jansen and Van Hanegem.
Then Van Hanegem, yeah.
You're going to say another guy in it, I can't remember. But if you're playing against 3 of that, you need at least 3 to go against them. So I think that was a major problem. But there's a lot of people, and this sounds heresy as well, a lot of people say that 1970 team, was stronger than the 67 team. Because it had players like Connolly and Hay in it,
Yeah. Jim Brogan, I think, played.
Brogan played as well. It was certainly a strong team.
Yeah, that's a lovely story. A great story on Yogi. I've been in his company on more than a few occasions. Certainly in the last couple of months, I was at a function with him. A lovely man, and I think his family at this moment will be a difficult time for them losing their dad. Granddad as well, especially for the grandchildren, and all our thoughts and prayers are with the family at this sad time. John Hughes, who passed away at the age of 79 yesterday. It's amazing that, Ruffy, isn't it, when you think about some of the great games. I mean, I look back over the last year, I wonder if the Rangers fans, I think, should look back with great pride at Rangers getting to the final, just as Celtic did with Seville, Dundee United against Gothenburg as well.
I think the good thing about Rangers getting to the final last year was they remembered the players from the previous final, like Colin Steen and wee Willie and all them, and it brought the club together through the vast amount of years. Back to John Hughes there, I was going to ask you, my memory's terrible. I remember being 15, and my dad took me to one of the games leading up to the 67, and I have a memory of John Hughes ripping Vojvodina to shreds out in the wing in a number 11 shirts on his shirt. Am I right in saying he played that night?
He did. The funny thing as well was, like, people forget as well, like Bertie Auld, who would be the quintessential Lisbon hero. Whatever you say, you think of Celtic in Lisbon, you think of Bertie with his badge and that. Yeah. He didn't play that night. Bertie was in the stand. He was dropped. He played Charlie Gallagher that night. Right. So this idea that there was just 11 Lisbon lines, you can see why, because it trips off the tongue. Every Celtic supporter can give you off that. But there was players that really made a real contribution to get the final. No more than, I would say, than John Hughes and Charlie Gallagher. I mean, Charlie that night was central to it with the corner kick that Billy scored the winner from,
And Jim and I, obviously younger, will look back, and I think, Jim, you'll understand this story when I tell it. I put a postal order in, stamped the envelope, put money in, and said, "Dear Ruffy, could I have tickets for the game against England? It's a big game. I think you'll be in goal." Nothing.
No, you kept the money though.
Not a bowl.
You kept the money.
Here's the money for the tickets. Nothing. Just that's it.
My dad.
Did your dad
get tickets? You weren't getting any. You'd taken his 2 tickets, you'd have been in trouble.
What's a great story about your dad, Ruffy, coming in?
Oh, my dad, against Holland. We were playing Holland at Hampden, and at the old Hampden, there was a wee window at the front where you left your comps, and I used to leave Mr. Ruff, my dad, and half an hour before the game, the wee security boy jumps at the dressing room door. Jockstein says, "What is it?" "Mr. Ruff's at the window, he can't find his comps." And Steen says to me, "What have you done?" I said, "I left my comps at the window, they must be there." And he says to the wee boy, so the wee boy goes away. Another 10 minutes later, chap at the door, and it's my dad. With his tartan hat on and his scarf and everything. "Still can't get the tickets." Jockstein says, "Will you sort the 2 tickets?"
Can you imagine that? No danger. Anyway, some lovely memories there. Great touch, Hugh, on John Hughes. I'm sure there are some people, and thank you to the countless amount of people on our feed who are actually just mentioning John Hughes, rest in peace. There's lots to talk about European football. We'll get your thoughts, guys, on the weekend's football as well. I haven't had a chance to speak to you about that, Hugh, but Rangers are playing Union. It's difficult sometimes when you do this show, if it's live, if people watch it. We've got lots of expats, thousands of people who watch it later on because they don't catch it live, Ruffy, which is why obviously on Friday you said you'd give Graham Alexander another 3 or 4 games, and Alison and I said no, he's for the chop. But nevertheless, Rangers are going to play Union, but looking ahead, if they can get past Union, suddenly you're in a situation where the winner plays either Monaco or PSV Eindhoven, so they know what they have to do to get to that Champions League group stage and that pot of money.
Yeah, they'll see what's ahead of them, but the most important thing is getting through this one. That's what they'll be completely focused on. But these are, I would say, probably the next 2 teams are probably another grade up, so they'll know what they're up against, and certainly, that, I mean, 2 or 3 years ago, they were really, really big sides, PSG. But I think they've got to concentrate on this one. They've got to get this one, and it is an ideal opportunity to get into the group stages.
Yeah, it's almost it's an indication of how far Rangers have come. A lot of Rangers fans on here talking about the fact that it's looking at the next one, whereas Giovanni Van Bronckhorst will be saying to the players, as Ruffy mentioned there, Jim, must focus on Union, despite the fact they may well have lost a couple of really good players. They're still a force to be reckoned with.
No, it will be a difficult game. All European games are difficult. I think you're looking at how well Rangers performed last year, especially with the second leg again being back at Ibrox. And Union have lost a couple of players, but it was interesting because coming on here I had a look at Union and sort of how they fared last year, and I think it was 17 games, they won 10 at home, and out of 17 away games they won 14. So it could be interesting, the game at Ibrox, if they look like a sort of counter-attacking team. But you would fancy Rangers going out there, fancy them to win both legs, but it's easier said than done. But the minute you start concentrating on the next round and who you can get, then that's when you sort of become a cropper. So they will be, but I'm sure that, like you said, Van Bronckhorst will have them totally tuned into you worry about the next round when you get there.
They do have, and it's a good point you make there on the stats on it. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst may not have Ryan Kent, doesn't have John Souttar for mitigating circumstances in his own family life, but Connor Golson said something in the press in the last 24 hours. He said, "This is the best squad I've been involved in." That's some statement to make.
Yeah, and it's one that's got to be proved, though. It's already, that's an opinion at the moment.
Yeah.
Because last season's squad was a squad that reached a European final. This season's squad just starts, so that's an opinion. Connor's entitled to it, and it's obviously an informed opinion. But there's got to be, it's got to be backed up with results. I think this is a difficult one for Rangers. I had a look at them as well over the weekend, both Rangers and Union, and one of the things that got me about Union is Union could say they were the best team in Belgium last year. They didn't win the Champions, but they could say it because they beat Anderlecht 4 times.
Yeah.
And they won the league what we would call one, like, and they lost the league playoffs, which is crazy.
It's a strange
Somebody
situation.
needs to, I had a read today. Somebody needs to explain it to me.
Can you imagine us adopting their system here in Scotland? It'd be mayhem.
It's like the rugby league system, you know, that they have in England. And you go, well, wait a minute. And you say to yourself, right, they've lost a couple of players, but this is a team that's come with a rocket. They've come up a division. They've beat the best team home and away twice. And you say to yourself, well, there must be something about this mob, you know, there must be, you know. So I think, I mean, you won't have to tell Giovanni Bronckhorst anything about them.
Yeah.
And he'll be completely focused. But I don't think this is quite the gimme. I hope it is.
Yep.
But I don't think this is quite the gimme that people might think.
No, I don't think it'll be the gimme, but I think because of the way Rangers played last year, I mean, obviously you highlighted there, Jim, their home form when they got them in the second leg. But I think over the last 2 or 3 seasons, I always feel as if there are certain teams right across Europe who know how to play European football, and Rangers were very much in that zone.
I train in my day job as a personal trainer, a few Rangers fans, and I was looking at the game. I can't really remember, I think it was Dundee where they come back and won 2-1, and it was like the first sort of time I had seen them, and you're looking at that. Then a couple of weeks later I watched them against Leipzig, and you were like, two completely different teams, do you know what I mean, in the big European nights at Ibrox, and they've got the crowd behind them. And with the second leg being there, as long as they go and they don't have a nightmare, you would fancy them coming back to Ibrox and going through. You would, because they are that strong, and they'll put them under pressure. But again, it's no complacency, or maybe it's no, you want to say, ignorance, if you know what I mean, in that when we play teams that we've never heard of, because there's no easy games in Europe anymore. We've all seen that.
No, absolutely. I think the other thing there, Jim, is
well.
you look and you say to yourself, nobody's heard of Union. You know, I'm sure even when we go back, who had heard of Vojvodina? You know what I mean? You look at these things and you think, okay, we've never heard of them, but they can have great players along the way. I mean, I remember Bertiold and I think Willie Henderson of Rangers when chatted to them about European football, and they said we come up against a guy who I'd never heard of, Joseph Masopust.
Masopust, the Czech midfielder.
And he was apparently just an absolutely, I mean, just world class.
But it was it's a smaller football community then. You didn't have, people watching this will laugh, but nowadays, like, my grandchildren will know players from all over the world.
Yeah.
See, when I went, even in 1979, I went to Hampden to see Maradona, because there was no YouTube. There was no Argentinian highlights. There was no Sky Sports. So all you'd heard was rumours about this guy. You couldn't have picked Maradona out of a lineup.
Yeah.
And so that's why you went to games, to discover what he was like.
You were in the crowd.
I picked him up I picked him up right away and went, I only want to play the first half here. You play the second half.
See that point where you were able to stand on your carry. Ruffy was able to do that as well. Just marvel at beating players.
But you didn't know the knowledge now. See, like us, like Jim and I saying, well, we'll have a look at this before you go on a show. You can watch YouTube, highlights. You can clips of games. You can, it's all club websites and all. That wasn't there in the days. It was a mystery.
You wouldn't have known anything about Haaland if you hadn't come on the show.
I never stopped talking about him.
The last couple of years, hasn't he? Because Hughes saw him up front, and nobody else was talking about him till you come on the show and said, you have to have a look at this guy.
Just out of curiosity, Hughes' son, and your man here, because obviously there's been a huge dowry left somewhere in an account, and they just go and watch German football regularly. Borussia Dortmund.
The Dortmund fans.
Yeah, so it's absolutely fantastic to get that kind of insight into it. But it's a great point you make, Jim, and I think Monaco or PSV Eindhoven, and then suddenly the other thing about it, Jim, that everybody realises now, and I think Hearts and Dundee United will realise it. If you get group stage football, now I reckon listen, it could be £500,000 either way. Conference League, 3 million. Europa League, you only have to look at what Rangers achieved, obviously going all the way to the final. But for Hearts, that could be £6 or £7 million in the kitty for group stage.
No, as it's massive financially. You look at like Sorgen, but Motherwell sort of last week, do you know what I mean, and what it means to the club. So as there's you want European football, you want the fans to get European football. It's great for Scottish football, but at the same time you need to look at the financial package that comes with it, and it can be massive for clubs in Scottish football.
How do players react? We're in a different game. We're paid to give an opinion. We have been journalists for a long period of time. How do players react? I thought it was, I'm not going to be two-faced about it, I thought it was an embarrassment. You want to see clubs out with Celtic and Rangers get there. I want to see Motherwell playing European football. Sligo Rovers was a winnable game.
Sligo Rovers was a very winnable game, but again, I've spoken about it a lot this week. There was 2 pre-seasons where Paul Sturrock took us to Dublin deliberately because they're mid-season. They played a lot of games, competitive football, and they were competitive games, and that was to get us ready for the start of the league season. And when you look at how it works, and I think the other tie was, what was the other tie? It
St.
was
Patrick's.
No, was it Viking and who Motherwell would have got in the next round?
Yeah, Viking we would have got.
But that's what I'm saying. Viking put out, was it Slavia Prague? Was it
Sparta Prague?
Sparta Prague,
yeah.
right? So you're thinking Motherwell, Sparta Prague, and then it's the 2 teams that are playing halfway through their competitive leagues that have actually
made it
qualified.
Yeah.
Which is something to be said in that, but how do you do it without giving the boys a break, if you know what I mean? Do you bring them back earlier? But it was very winnable, and it was extremely disappointing for the club. And you're looking at the likes of Dundee United and Hearts, maybe seeing Motherwell going out. Like I said, nobody wants to go to Europe, but like I said, they'll need to be, we're early in our season, but I don't think, like I said, the Dutch League started yet. Do you know what I mean? So Dundee United might be a game to ahead of AZ Alkmaar.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to the game on Thursday night, Ruffy, and see Dundee United, see what they're made of, because I think they look as if they could be, once they get everybody in, and obviously Stephen Fletcher was impressive at the weekend too. That's a winnable game on the Thursday. Hearts, I watched them against Ross County, second half better than the first half. Linfield or FC Zurich, they'll be looking at that and thinking, that could be a good one for them.
Yeah, and as you said, it's important to get into the group stages, because not only do you talk about the money that they're going to earn, it attracts other players. You know, if you're interested in a player and you want to go and sign him, you know, being to a Europa Cup final and being to a final of the Scottish Cup and being in the final, players look at that and go, well, this might be not a bad side I'm going to. Yeah, so it's really important that you do well in these high-profile tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed that Rangers can do the business. We'll discuss the game against Union tomorrow on the programme, and also as we get closer to the other European games, we'll get thoughts of managers and players ahead of the other 2 matches. Of course, Dundee United will know that they've got to try and get past AZ Alkmaar. It's Riga or Gil Vicente. And what do you make of United this season and the players they brought in?
Like I said, when you look at, I've had a look, and you're saying you bring in Fletcher, and you create chances, he will score goals.
Yeah.
They took Tony Watt, who I think was the top scorer in the league at the point before he went to Motherwell. Do you know what I mean? And that when you look at how last season panned out for Motherwell, that was a big loss, because they won 3 games second half. Was it 3 games second half of the season? But they still finished in the top 6, which showed you how good they were in the sort of first half of the season. So they definitely get players that if you give them chances, they will convert.
Yeah, Levitt looks as if he's a really good acquisition. I didn't actually think they would be able to get him.
Well, that was, I know a couple of people that I think they were a wee bit surprised to hold on to him, but it just goes to show you that he enjoyed his football there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in the sense. So it'll be interesting to see how they fare, but I'd say you look at the league in total this year, and I think it's got to be a very competitive league. When you watch other games, like Ross County were different class against Hearts in the first half. They hit the crossbar, they hit the post.
Yeah.
And you've got Kilmarnock coming back up, you get Livingston, who gave Rangers a tough time. So when you look at Dundee United in the actual full league, it's a decent standard, but I think then that drives the standard of every team up. With competitive, you still look all the sort of competitive games. You've got Rangers and Celtic, who you'll obviously fancy to win the title and they'd be close to it, but outside that, could be an interesting top 6.
Yeah. I think you're right, Jim. I mean, I was at the Hearts game, and I thought Hearts second half, Forrest impressed with him. Shanklin gets substituted, but once he gets up to speed, I think he will be a player for them. And over and above that, Hugh, as we know, Robbie Nielsen will still sign a couple of players before that window closes. I mean, he's still hunting after what he said in the press conference afterwards.
Yeah, and I think Hearts can look forward to a season. I think that the case is, even if they lose out in the Europa League, I think they're guaranteed
Conference,
Europa Conference, so they can budget for that. And Europa Conference might be very little to some teams, but I would reckon the Hearts will sell out European Conference. You know, I think there'll be 14, 15,000 at conference games.
Easily.
Easily. So they'll budget that in, and you're saying, well, that starts to get, there's going to be money there. They've obviously got, their benefactor in the background. They've got season ticket sales. Yeah, I think there'll be more players coming in. Hearts will want to go on and be stronger. I thought it was a really interesting game at the weekend, because I thought Ross County would cause them problems. I predicted a draw in my usual
fashion.
Usual wrong way.
I'll tell you how mad it is. Ruffy is predicting Ross County not to get relegated. That's how good they are.
That's how good.
He's been good. 7 seasons he's been wanting them out of the league.
But Malky Mackay's shown that he can. I mean, if anybody had any doubts about his coaching credentials, we know that there was other issues involved, but I was very impressed with Ross County the weekend.
Wait till you see the front three. The boy Edwards has got a trick, the number 7 for them. Likes being players, Samuel as well. They've got 3 or 4 really good players on the periphery who Malky's managed to scout, who once they get up to fitness will be pushing for a starting place. I think
money's not a huge concern there either. I'm not saying they're Barcelona, but if Malky really, really needs money at some time this season, namely Christmas, there'll be money there for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've talked about the European campaign. We hope, fingers crossed, that we're looking at Dundee United and Hearts with positive results when they're in action. Hearts obviously know Linfield or FC Zurich. There's a big talking point in Scottish football, Jim, which is mainly Motherwell and the vacancy for the job. Stephen Hamill, this is the strangest thing ever, but suddenly he puts himself in the box seat with 1 win, and there'll be a clamour. I bet there's a pile here like that on Alan Burrow's desk for job applicants.
No, there will be a pile that size, but it's funny because he's in the hot seat right at this present moment in time. I think I'm pretty sure he's a club's record appearance holder. You know what I mean? He left, he went down to Southend, and I played left back for 2 seasons. Then when I went to Plymouth, he came back up the road. He's been involved there with the youth setup. He's been taking there's a lot of quality, like I said, in the Motherwell youth setup. At the minute, he knows that inside out. He's always been a fan's favourite, so like I said, the best thing he can do is, while he's got the opportunities, win games. And like it was a great start from there at the weekend. And you look, and people will say that he's not got any managerial experience, but he's also beaten an experienced manager in Stephen Robinson.
Can I ask you this then? You've seen him, you know what he's like as a guy, you know the kids that he's working with, and you've said there's a talented pool there. Do you think he's got what it takes? What has he got that maybe Alan Burrows and the rest of the board will look at and say, it's yours?
Well, he has got what it takes, because I've known him for a long time as a professional. And then, I'll get back to that in a minute. To get back to the experience one, they got a man sent off with about 8 minutes to go, so he probably had to play about 30 minutes, where he would have had to have changed things. And he changed it tactically and still got the result when they were under pressure. It was just flung on him, like in the Friday as well, right? So you look at it, but he's always had that drive and determination. Steve, he has, like I said, he played left back behind me when I played in front of him. Although he used to give me that one where I would angle for the pass and he'd pop it off and then hit the channel. Do you know what I mean? I was actually just a right eye. But no. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out, but like at the same time, he's got Brian Kerr in there with him, and he's had, like I said, experience. Albion Rovers, East Kilbride, and then he was assistant manager to Gary Caldwell. So, like, and you're looking at people that are hungry. You want young managers that are hungry. You kind of can look at when people say that about Alec Neil. Do you know what I mean? In the sense of when Alec Neil took her at Hamilton Accies, then they beat Celtic 1-0 at Parkhead that year, I'm sure, and then he went to, was it Norwich, and then to get Norwich promoted. So these are the chances when you're coming through. You look for an in, and hopefully if he does get the opportunity, do you know what I mean, then Hammy can lead us on to better things. Yeah, I mean that's the point, Ruffy. Sometimes it's that sliding doors moment. It's that the train stops. It's that opportunity. You got to grasp it. He is there. They'll know what his qualities are, and as Jim mentioned, he's hungry.
Yeah, but over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of young players behind the scenes at Motherwell, you know, and people have moved on. And I'm talking about Stevie Craigan and McManus, and they've all been there. So Alan Burrows will know about all these guys, but I think it's only right to be seen that they interview, you know, the pile that they've got in front of them. And then they decide, you know, do they want to keep it within the club? People who know the club inside out and know the youth coming through, because we know that Motherwell over the last, maybe not recently, but previous to that, the spin-off was all these young players coming through the academy, and they were churning them out, you know, year on, you know, so they might say, well, is that the road we need to go down? And if that is the road we need to go down, we need somebody, you know, that knows how it works. Or they go down the road as somebody out of left field, because there will be a lot of people on that pile looking for a job.
Yeah, okay, we'll wait and see about that. From your own perspective, maybe, fingers crossed, a wee bit more involvement for you in Motherwell. It's something that would be great.
Like I said, I'm 16s at the minute, and I'm enjoying that. Like, it's good working with the kids, do you know what I mean? And we've got a really talented bunch. But it's that sort of, at that level, it's transitioning between, they've got the skills, they've got the talent that got them there. Now it's more tactically and actually teaching them how to play real football, is what you would say, because you're not just chasing the ball at a playground. Yeah. So, but I'm enjoying it.
Do you think, and that's something that I think will hearten a lot of Motherwell fans, and a lot of clubs fans want to know, there's a good bunch of youngsters there to call on.
There is a good bunch of youngsters there to call on. And I think the 16s that were last year had a really good side that they've moved up now. They'll in under 18s, and there's a few of them that I would say probably, you'd be saying, depending on their progress, 6 months to a year, and we'll be chatting at the door. So that's good for the club. But like Ruffy said, it's one of them, is what you got to be as a club, because you blood young boys, you know you're not going to get consistency. Do you know what I mean? But to bring the club on, you look to sell them, make a profit, like they've done Turnbull and people that they've done down the years, and then that's how Motherwell survive as well. That's how a lot Dundee United have done it. I was at United and we brought through my youth team, won the league, and you had Stevie Thompson, Craig Easton, myself, Paul Gallagher, the goalkeeper, that all come through that youth team, do you know what I mean? And we all moved on as well. But these are stuff that Scottish football needs today, as in blood the youngsters. It was the reason why we got rid of the reserves. You had 24 pro players, but in the youth are trying to break into that, and they get rid of the reserves to make it under 21, so that we could blood the youngsters. Yeah. So
how did that work out? The reserves are coming back. I don't know about you. You must be an advocate of people being able to play with older guys so they can get that experience and suck up all that knowledge.
I am 100%. Like I said, you give youth a chance, but with the reserves it's a totally different. I remember going down to Barrowfield, and one of my first games, it was like Andreas Tom played, and I think Van Hooijdonk were coming back for injury. I think McStay was coming to end his career, he played. Malpass was coming back for injury, so I've got Mo bossing me about, telling me where to go. But you learn from that, whereas you come through now and it's kids playing against kids, and you're asking them to use their voice, but nobody's ever told them what to say or where they should be. And it does help, as in the sense, I've said that a lot, with if you've got good young players, then get them out to Stenhousemuirs, get them out to that, let them play with older guys come at the end of their career, do you know what I mean? They'll learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. Wise words from you, Jim, which is why we paid the £6,000 to get you on here today. It was hefty, but it's well worth it. Well worth it, Hugh, to be honest with you. I wonder how much Hibs will have to pay to try and get Martin Boyle back. There's a wee sniff that he might come back. Love to see him back in our game.
Oh, most definitely, and I'm sure the Hibs supporters would like to see him back as well, you know, but it's up to the boy personally, you know. He's had a wee taste abroad. Sometimes it doesn't suit what you thought it might be, and you might find an avenue back again. So, you know, I don't know if his wife went with him, because she plays, you know, with the ladies team. So you've got to take these things into consideration as well.
The reason I'm laughing is it's got to be the first time he doesn't know anybody's movement in a family. Do you know what that is? That's 10 years of telepathy right there. But nevertheless, the reason why I think he'd have enjoyed the sample of playing away from Easter Road is all that tax-free cash in a suitcase. Right. He can come back after 1 year and he's made.
And quite, I mean, that's what it's about. People try to earn a living, you know. I'll tell you, the more you're around football players and the more you see inside the game, you realise what a brutal game it is. It's brutal. So you've got to take every chance you get. I mean, you're standing there, one guy doesn't like you and you're out of the team and you never to return. One injury and this big deal that you were going to sign next year that was going to set up all your family. No, you're out driving a taxi.
Yeah.
Nothing against taxi drivers, but they're not making football money, you know. So I've got no problems at all about, you know, if they do it properly, above board, people going away for money, and you'll be right. Martin would have earned a right few. I mean, you can only see it now with the live golf thing. There's money to be made out there, all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good on him. But if he wants to come back, I would love to see him. But I think he was. No one man makes a team. We know that. But Hibs with Martin Boyle in it versus Hibs without it, he gave them a complete different dimension. That pace up front, that knowledge. I love to see him come back.
Well, to be fair, Jim, I would love to see him and a fit Aidan McGeady. I mean, Aidan McGeady's at the tail end of his game, but he's still got a trick that can beat some of the players in our division.
He's still a good player. He produced when he was down south for Sunderland, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? And I think it was a surprise when he left. I think he was a fan's favourite. Yeah. But it's interesting because Hibs already have a lot of pace. Seeing their game at the weekend, they've got a lot of pace. Adding him to it, and it's like you said, it gives them even more pace up front. Then there'll definitely be. See, when you look at the Scottish League, there's not much between the teams. So see having a player like that, right, that's got that sort of pace, and it's interesting how Hibs always managed to do it, because my nemesis when people say to me, like, who's the sort of best winger you've ever, what winger gave you the most sort of problems in your career, then for me it was Sproul. Sproul just had that pace and it was kind of like he could kick it, could hit you and then he hit him in the knee, see as long as the ball went by you. You will never catch them, do you know what I mean? And like I said, Hibs produced another one when they produced Boyle, in the sense of that pace that's terrifying.
Yeah. Isn't it remarkable in Scottish football, as you say, the one player, I mean, we know it's a team game, but everyone's so tight that one player can, I mean, that point you made about Tony Watt, I hadn't really considered that, how they change.
Just lost their way.
Just lost, with one player. And you could go through every team and say, they don't want to be losing him and they don't want to be losing, it's so tight, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But strikers need a player like him.
Aye.
No, if you're a striker in the box and it's not coming in, or it's not somebody that's getting to the danger area to put it in, then you're on a hiding to nothing. You're not going to get any delivery. So that's why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Small matter of a derby. I don't know if you enjoyed derbies, Jim. Ruffy certainly didn't enjoy them because there's a classic catchphrase, he get pumped every time he played them.
But that stat isn't as bad as what it is.
You're a stat man nowadays.
Sent me it. 16 games.
Right, yep.
No wins. 9 draws.
9 draws.
And the rest were defeats.
Yeah, how many of the 9 draws were at home? That's the thing we need to find out.
No, I couldn't add one.
No, but I mean, at that time, I think actually probably just after you were there, I started as the reporter at Radio 4th, and in that period, Hearts absolutely dominated the derbies. I think they went on a 22-game unbeaten run. They were so dominant in it. So I'm really looking forward to it. And of course, Barry Mackay was speaking at the weekend. He scored a brilliant goal, and he said it's so crucial to get that confidence-boosting win in a derby. It sets you up for the season.
Every game's big for us. The fans expect you to win every game, and for us, obviously, the derby's no bigger. Whether it comes 4 or 5 games down the line or whatever, it's obviously important that we go out and get the win.
Celebrate it. Quite simply, Jimmy drags the ball out of the air, sidesteps 2 or 3 players, past the goalie, and then into the back of the net. What a goal.
It's like you said, when it comes over his head and he just takes a touch in between the 2 defenders, then you think that comes down to composure. The keeper's right on him, you think he's got to hit it, and then another wee movement and he just leaves the 3 of them sort of lying in a heap and rolls at the net. So it's a great finish. And like I said, he brings a different dimension as well. Do you know what I mean? The Hearts for coming for the middle of the park. And Forrest, at the start of the second half, like, he really came on to the game, he looked really lively, and again he took his goal well as well, plays it out wide and then gets his cell in the box. So I think it'll be an interesting game at Easter Road. I think Hibs could cause them problems when you looked at the sort of pace the Hibs have got and how they struggled against Ross County first half to get to grips with them. But then again, Hearts have got a quality, like I said, a right good side. And again, Shanklin has always scored goals, right? And score goals, need to get him up to speed, but better way to open your account than scoring in a derby, so he'll be licking his lips at that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the games. I love the Edinburgh derby, Hugh, especially at Tynecastle, because I think it's just a brilliant stadium for the atmosphere of it. Easter Road, equally so now, because I like the fact they've put the big screens in, trying to close it in again. But I still think Hearts have the edge if this one was going head to head.
Hearts have got the edge. I mean, I think nobody's. If Hibs get up to Hearts' level this season, that's progress, because we saw what last season was. Hearts were what I call the winners of the non-Old Firm League. They won it comfortably. Yeah. Hibs didn't reach top 6, so Hearts will go into this, undoubtedly with the edge. But it's a good marker. A game at home for Hibs. Early in the season, it has opportunities for Hibs as well as for Hearts, Peter.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, we haven't had a chance, I'll get Jim's thoughts as well on the weekend football. Celtic unfurled the championship flag. You've got a man who scores an absolute raker of a goal, and the manager just highlights some of his deficiencies at the end of the game. What did you make of Ange's aspect of looking at Jota's overall performance rather than the goal?
I thought that was the most interesting thing of the whole weekend to me as a journalist. If you're looking as a journalist, saying what the stories are, what's going on behind the scenes. Because see, that was showed to me was like a manager who's complete control of the dressing room. He's not going, Jota, I'm not like this. I better not say this because I've got to go in and face him and might go in a huff. He's just saying this is the way it is. Yeah, it was a beezer, but he did this. And see, the other thing that was very, very clear to me in that very understated way, and I might be totally wrong, but this is the impression I got, that he was really unhappy about the 90 minutes. He was quite happy about the first 30, and he was okay about bits of the second half, but he was really unhappy about the 90 minutes. And it went down to that thing again and again about Celtic not taking their chances. When they were on top, after 30 minutes, if it was been 3-0, you'd have said that's a pretty fair reflection. Honestly. Yet it wasn't. At 1-0, Johnny Hayes misses a good chance, etc., etc. So I thought that was really interesting. It showed to me more and more that Ange, just the domination he has in the dressing room. And it was a further wee thing. There's a thing on YouTube later where Callum Carter-Vickers was asked these daft questions, who's the player in the dressing room with the best hairstyle and all that. And he came to, who's the manager's pet? And he ducked the question completely. He said, the manager's all right with it. You could see that he didn't want to get into anything that could be construed as a criticism, an observation or something about the manager. He's quite happy saying who had the nicest haircut or who wore the bad shoes, but as soon as a question, and you could see him going, oh no, I'm not.
Well, I was going to say to you, quick fire questions are what I call 20 minefields, where we usually think,
we'll get some here.
Here's a wee line here,
But you could tell right in front of the camera, no, he treats us all the same, and I wouldn't say he didn't want to
entertain it. Of course, Jota scored a wonderful goal, but I think he was reading from the hymn sheet when he was asked about the fans' reaction. He's now looking at it and saying it's only one game, it's only 3 points. There's a long way to go.
It speaks for itself. Like, Celtic is a massive club, and it was a great ceremony. But as I told before, like, the last season is done. So we are not in the last season. Everything starts from the zero now. Everyone has the same points, so we are not focusing on last season. We want to make a message to the league that we want to be strong every game, and this team is just hungry for more and more.
Yeah, Conor Goldson reckons that Rangers are better this season. You've got Celtic who've defeated Aberdeen at the weekend, Jim. What's your take on it? I mean, obviously it's difficult from a Motherwell perspective. Most of our panel have got St Johnstone to be relegated. I think only one person has picked Rangers to win the league. The rest have opted for Celtic. And then in the middle, it's, I still think Hearts will be the third force. What's your take on it?
So it's really, like you say, St Johnstone at the weekend, actually watching the game, you look at St Johnstone 2 seasons ago, they won 2 cups. Do you know what I mean? And last season was a bad season, right? And we know that. And you wouldn't expect Callum to fix that. Right, they're always got to be competitive. They're hard to beat. St Johnstone, I think at the weekend they were hard done by. When you look at the sending off, it definitely changed the game. So it's a difficult one when you're looking at relegation. That's one of them where it kind of pans out the first couple of weeks of the season who are going to be down there in terms of the top of the league. Rangers and Celtic, it's again, you had the start of the season where you had Ange taking over, and then Celtic went through their period and then come back strong, and then obviously you had Rangers. It was halfway through the season, wasn't it, when they had a change. So you've seen the reaction for the two. I think Celtic, and it just goes to show you there when you're speaking about Jota and the goal, and it's phenomenal, but you just need to keep raising the bar. You need to keep raising the bar, and the manager's not happy, and he's letting them know that, even though like Aberdeen first game of the season they win 2-0. In terms of the best of the rest, looking at it the way it is right now, you would fancy Hearts.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, it's the first game of the season. It's so hard to predict, as in the new signings, how they settle.
I think out of all of them, though, if you were talking about somebody that was going to emerge, you would expect Aberdeen to really push Hearts.
Well,
but I think Ross County, I mentioned it yesterday on the show, with the players that he's got, I think even Malky said, okay, stay in the league, that's your bog standard answer, but if you're in that top six last season, and I think he's got a better side this season.
Mm-hmm. But when you look at the sort of the bottom six last year, you've got Hibs, Aberdeen in it.
Yeah,
which isn't good enough. So therefore, they'll need to be pushing. You've got back. Not that you want to mention pitches, but you've got Livingston and Kilmarnock playing at home. They've got to look. If Kilmarnock are looking to stay in the league, then home form's got to be massive. You look at Livingston. I thought Livingston were actually quite impressive at the start. I know Rangers dominated, you know what I mean, it was, but the substitutions changed the game in that. So Livingston again, that's a tough fixture at Livingston. Yeah. But again, you've got to be looking at Aberdeen and Hibs to be pushing for the top six. But then again, the teams that are there, as in Motherwell, Ross County, and deservedly so last season, and you can see that, like the form in the first half. That's what I'm saying. I think this season, outside, if you say Hearts, could be pushing for that third spot. I think anything underneath that, it's got to be a tough league. And I think looking at the weekend, discipline becomes key, because you had St Johnstone nothing each, and they get, like I said, the sending off in that I thought was poor. I thought it was a booking, but they lose a goal late on, and then Dundee United, who were 1-0 up, and they were comfortable, and then it was just stupid double yellow, and then like they lose a goal late on as well, and Kilmarnock got a point. So when you look at it, got to be that tight, then discipline and everything comes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ruffy, you'll never believe this. I'm going to, obviously, tough question for you to answer, but we always, on our feed, try and make sure that people try and behave themselves, try and conduct themselves in the proper manner. I think, as you know, I am a stickler for people not abusing anyone on our site. We love our football, we like the banter, we can take a caning. Can you come up with, in the UK, the two most abused players on social media, which I found... I can understand one of them because of circumstances, and the other one, well, it's just because, he's such a global icon.
I would probably go Ronaldo.
Yeah.
I don't know who the other one would be.
Yeah. You want to take a stab at it, Hugh?
I would have thought James McLean would be up there round about.
Not a bad it's not a bad shot, yeah.
Round about November.
I think James McLean is actually, annual one.
Rashford.
No, you're on that. Harry Maguire.
Harry Maguire. I'm just going to say
Harry Maguire. I was going to say, it's to look at it, and like I said, conversations about it with social media and stuff like that. The memes, everything today with it, like the boy to go out and play every week. If hopefully he's no, he doesn't see a lot of it, but to go out there and play every week, it's incredible. The amount of abuse is vile.
The stats on it are chilling. The analysis of 2.3 million tweets in the first half of last season, I think in England, found 60,000 abusive posts affecting 7 in 10 of the top flight players. Half of the abuse was directed at just 12 individuals, 8 of them from United. And the other thing about it, and I mentioned it last year, Hugh, if Marcus Rashford's getting abuse, the game's a bogey for me, you know. And I'm not condoning, I don't think Harry Maguire should get it, nobody should get it, but Marcus Rashford was fighting for people to get food. Money, food, you name it. If you're talking about an absolute saint, that boy is it for me.
Yeah, but the whole thing about the social media stuff is the way, not just the way how strong and violent it is, but the way it stays and is maintained. I think most footballers, we talked about it being a brutal game, most footballers have been on a park and will be getting pelters, but they know they get off the park, it dies down, and they'll go home to people that love them and cosset them, their teammates around and say, we all get it. It's because you could be sitting, I mean, see if I was a footballer, I'd never be anywhere. Imagine going on to social media, is even like Andy Robertson. There's an example. Andy Robertson, probably the greatest Scottish footballer in terms of what he's done for himself, an absolute beacon for young footballers. He goes on top of a bus to celebrate winning 2 cups. He went on to social media that night. You'd have thought he'd murder somebody.
Yeah.
You know, seriously, I mean, you're looking at that.
That was because you had a beer?
Aye, because he's on a bus celebrating 2 trophies. And then when you read the stuff as well, I'm actually feeling bad for him. I mean, he's not a great pal of mine, and I've interviewed him. But if I was actually one of his family, I'll tell you, Peter, I'd have been affected by that as well, if they're calling my son that. It's just vile.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, it's something obviously that we will continue to shout out for the decent people who watch our programme on a regular basis, and hopefully we, throughout this season, will try and police it as best we can. Just before we go, might as well tell you, Ruffy, Jim was in the opposing team, but we were out there for a really good cause, because every year at Airdrie, they put out their Airdrie Legends side, and they have a kind of a celebrity side for Suicide Prevention Week, and they do a great job. There was 1,000 people at the Airdrie Stadium for this match. It was a great day, Jim, wasn't it?
Yep. No, it was a great day for a really good cause, and it was an entertaining match.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, it was great to see Jimmy Sanderson. Oni Coyle was there, Marvin Wilson. There was a real good clutch of the 92 Airdrie side that played in Europe, and lots of ex-Airdrie players were there. And obviously Jim was playing for the celebrity side. How you get picked for the celebrity side? You should have been in that other team. But I have to say, Jim, Oni Coyle, who easily at 154, he had scored a hat-trick, Ruffy, inside 15 minutes.
Yeah. Are you going to tell us who missed the penalties? Come on, you may
well,
as well.
No, I'm going to tell you what's that. I scored an own goal.
Oh, I kept that quiet.
I know, I had to keep it quiet.
I'm going to be honest, it was the deftest touch you've ever seen in your life. It was the deftest touch.
The keeper's never come off his line the whole game, and I've side-footed it past him, Hugh. I was chuffed until I realised I was in my own 6-yard area. But nevertheless, I mean, it's 7-7. How we never won the game? I mean, Oni Coyle was just a goals machine.
No, he was. I think he get, what was it? 6? Did he score 6?
Yeah, he must have hit 6 goals.
He gets 6. He gets 6 with the 7. Yeah. But he did miss a penalty.
He missed a penalty. I mean, honestly, and Brian Prunty needs to have a long, hard look at himself in the art of penalties.
So does Mark Kerr. Yeah,
Mark Kerr. We're getting Kerzo on the show, by the way. He'll get pelters for that as well. But you'd be happy with it. You got a medal and you got the trophy as well. It was absolutely raging. But nevertheless, for a really good cause. So well done to all the people who organised that for Suicide Prevention Week. Great to have Hugh back with us. Are you feeling fit for a 10th season, Hugh? We're going to have a night out. We've got to have a party for it.
Is that going to mean in lieu of a testimonial? That's what you're going to fob me off with McDonald's.
No. What we'll do is we'll do what Ruffy did. By the way, what we'll do is we'll play Celtic and Rangers in a testimonial for you, and cut the game early because he was worried about the money coming through the turnstiles. That's the way to have a testimonial.
Man has a testimonial every year.
Yeah, absolutely. 10 years, Ruffy. I never thought he'd last with us, but he is actually. Amazing. If I leave you with this one tale, just as we're ready to say goodbye, Hugh was actually the saviour. Was that fair, Ruffy? Because Ruffy and I were in the first 2 weeks. I'd come from Radio Clyde, he came from Real Radio, And I realised right away that only one of us dealt with the facts. so I said to him after week 2, Jim, Ruffy, this isn't working. I need to go and get somebody to keep me sane. And there he is on my right-hand side. He was a good signing, wasn't he?
Certainly was. And the next time you come on, Jim, cut these stats out.
Sorry, Ruffy.
I'm not happy with research.
The last thing we need is facts. Brilliant. Jim, we wish you well. I really hope there's a pathway for you at Motherwell. Stevie Hamill, if he gets the job as well, it'd be great. And great to see you operating at a higher level, although you love working with the youngsters. Great to have you on. I'm sure you're going to be here on a regular basis, just commenting on the football too. From Hugh, Ruffy, Jim and myself, Peter Martin, don't forget, hit the subscribe button, join the football family. Thanks for watching.